Hello, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. We're just going to give folks a couple minutes to land. Feel free to say hi in the chat, and we'll get started in a couple minutes. Hi again to folks who just joined. We'll be getting started in just a couple minutes. Just waiting for everybody to arrive. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. All right. Atia, do you want to go to the next slide so we can just start introducing ourselves in the chat? Thank you. So I see some folks already saying hi. Please keep it going. If you'd like to let us know where you're calling in from and what brings you here today, we'd love to get to know each other a little bit. And you can check out nativeland.ca to find out a little bit more about the territories that you're living on. I'll introduce myself in just a beat, but my name is Johanna. I organize with 350 and I'm calling in from Toronto today. Really happy to be here. Okay, I see folks coming in from the West Coast, from all over the country. Look at this. I see a question in the chat about a recording. I don't know about a transcription, but we will have a recording that will circulate soon, so don't worry about that. Some familiar faces here tonight. Thank you all so much for coming. Okay, maybe we can get started. Haley, do you want to take us away?
Yeah, welcome everyone. So as we start this call, I think it's important to ground ourselves in the fact that we're all living on Indigenous land. I'm coming from the unceded territory of the Kanakahaka Mohawk Nation. Indigenous people have stewarded this land for thousands of years. Since colonization, Indigenous people have been subjected to violence and genocide, in a large part because of the expansion of various extractive industries in so-called Canada. This legacy is not just ancient history, it's current and ongoing and includes very really the recent Memorandum of Understanding, which we'll be calling the MOU for short, between the federal and Alberta government, which we're going to be talking about today. So this MOU directly undermines the rights, laws, and sovereignty of the First Nations whose territories the proposed pipeline would cross. In the history of these projects, First Nations have borne the brunt of impacts from the oil and gas industry's expansion, and they've also been the most successful leaders in the fight against these projects. And I'm really excited that on this call, we're going to have Eve Saint and Janelle Lapointe, two Indigenous leaders, who are going to talk more about this moment and the colonial context that it sits in. I'll pass it to Joanna. Oh, actually, no, I'll introduce myself. So yeah, my name's Haley. My pronouns are she, her. And I'm an organizer with Common Horizon. We're a movement of Gen Z and millennial workers with 5 chapters across Canada and growing. And we're trying to train up a next generation of organizers. And we're fighting back against corporate greed to win climate and affordability solutions. And also Janelle is one of our founding members too.
Awesome. So like I said, organized with 350, 350.org, teamed up with Common Horizon to put on this call tonight. I'm joined by my colleague Atia, who's based in Vancouver, who's my fellow 350 Canada member. And we're really excited to be here with you tonight. Many of you know 350. We are a global climate justice movement, an organization that seeks to build a people-powered movement and win campaigns to undermine the fossil fuel sector and achieve a just energy transition. So I know many of you have been with us for a long time, and we're really excited to have you here with us tonight so we can confront this moment of crisis and take action together. You mind going to the next slide? All right, so to get started, we're going to continue to welcome you all to this call. And Haley's going to give us a quick overview of kind of what's happening in this political moment, why we decided to gather tonight, what it is that we're responding to. And then we're going to turn it over to our amazing panel of guest speakers, Janelle Lapointe and Eve Saint, who will introduce a little bit more in a beat. And before we go, of course, we're all going to take action together. We know we can't wait in this moment of crisis. We have to get moving immediately. And so we're going to take action together tonight, and we're also going to leave you folks with some exciting calls to action that you can run with over the next couple of weeks and months. And with that, I'll pass it back to Haley. Thank you all again so much for coming.
Wonderful. Okay, so thinking about this moment, I think where we're at is like Carney was elected, Prime Minister Carney was elected on a wave of economic anxiety and uncertainty that was just supercharged by Trump's tariff war. And many Canadians look to Carney as someone with experience to steer us out of this mess, and his Build Canada message did resonate with many that was looking for hope. But now we see exactly how Carney is governing, and it is how some of us, suspected all along, with attack after attack on our communities and the things we care about. Where he could be investing in making life better for working people and reinforcing the social services we depend on and working to transition Canada to a powerful green energy economy, he's instead working to keep us tied in the boom-bust cycle of the oil industry and its deadly impacts. Carney has rammed through Bill C-5 through Parliament to allow his government to fast-track toxic infrastructure projects under the guise of national sovereignty. He appointed the former CEO of the Trans Mountain Pipeline to head up his major projects office, which is definitely a conflict of interest, and is actively pushing destructive fossil fuel projects and megamines on Indigenous land. And now he's announced a deal with Alberta that simultaneously paves the way for a toxic pipeline and guts almost every piece of federal climate legislation that our movement has fought for. Whether or not this pipeline ever happens, and really hopefully it obviously doesn't, but already so much damage is being done by this MOU, which just gives big oil CEOs exactly what they wanted, and they're just getting everything on their wish list. I'll pass it back.
Amazing. Thank you for that overview, Haley. That is so comprehensive, and we're going to dig into it a little bit more. We're going to invite our panelists to join us. So I will maybe stop sharing my screen so that we can see our panelists. And maybe we could. Amazing. Thanks so much. Okay. Lovely. Okay, so it is my honor to invite our two wonderful panelists to the digital stage. First of all, I'd like to welcome Janelle Lapointe. Janelle is a climate justice and Indigenous rights organizer from Stellatin First Nation. She is currently a senior advisor at the David Suzuki Foundation and a guest on Treaty 13 territory, the traditional lands of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Huron-Wendat peoples, as well as the Mississaugas of the Credit. She leans on her lived experience growing up on her small reserve in northern British Columbia to ensure that intersectionality is at the forefront of environmental narratives to build power and help others see their stake in fighting back against the status quo. I'd also like to invite Eve Saint. Welcome, Eve. Eve is a Wet'suwet'en land defender and a mother of two and a leading organizer in the movement urging RBC to divest from Coastal GasLink and the fossil fuel industry. Eve is the daughter of Chief Woos, one of the Wet'suwet'en Hereditary Chiefs, and a co-founder and lead coordinator of 8th Fire Rising, a network of Indigenous land defenders and leaders opposing the recent onslaught of annihilating federal provincial bills such as Bill C-5, Bill 5, Bill 14, Bill 15, and so on, so many. Eve lives in Takranto, where she cares for her two beautiful children. I'm so grateful that you're both here today. Thank you for joining us. I admire you both all the time from close up and afar. We're not always in the same place, but I'm so grateful for the opportunities that we get to share time together, and so grateful about the fact that you are unapologetic voices for justice. You don't shy away from speaking the truth whenever it needs to be spoken, and I know that you have so many important insights to share with us during this moment. And it's an overwhelming time. We just heard from Haley. So I'm just going to throw it to you folks right off the bat. Maybe Janelle, you could start us off with what do you make of these recent developments in climate politics here in so-called Canada? Whose voices and perspectives do you think are being prioritized by the Carney government right now?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Ati. I'm really grateful to be here as well. Recent developments, I don't like them. Not only do I think they're completely nonsensical, but I think they're a direct threat, not only to communities here in so-called Canada, coast to coast to coast, but also internationally. When I think about whose voices and perspectives are being prioritized, obviously the fossil fuel interests and the corporate elite, multinational corporations that operate and harm Indigenous lands and exploit labor not only on our soil but worldwide. And I think that's evident. Haley talked about how the former CEO of Trans Mountain Pipeline is now heading the major projects office. And to me, that's not only a capture by oil industry, it's far more sinister. TMX was a project that had massive resistance from Indigenous people, from concerned citizens of Burnaby, and really Canadians across the country, had multiple litigation threats. It was stalled many times from frontline resistance, from protecting migratory birds, from concerns of salmon habitat. And yet this project was pushed through. And so I think they're rewarding this former CEO, not only from her ties to the fossil fuel infrastructure and industry, but as someone that has a proven record of somehow building awful projects despite concerns from Indigenous people and Canadians of coast to coast. And so really concerning that that's the kind of behavior that's being rewarded. I want to talk a little bit about COP30 and Canada's presence there, because I attended COP30 in Belém. It was my first time attending COP, and my primary objective was to build solidarity with Indigenous movements, not only here in Canada, but worldwide, and to really pay attention to how Canada is talking about climate action. And what we saw was the Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Minister Julie DeBrusen, coming into COP for the first time talking about Canada's commitments to the Paris agreements and desire to keep the world below 1.5 degrees, which is something that Mark Carney has been purposely avoiding talking about, and even, saying things like, well, we believe in results, not objectives, and really dancing around the question of whether he was going to commit to those targets. And so that was a signal, and I think a purposeful PR strategy to look like a leader on climate change to the global community. And I had the opportunity to sit down with the minister the day after Mark Carney announced the latest rounds of major projects, really highlighting his commitment to LNG, championing the North Coast transmission line, which is going to go through my territory in northern central so-called BC, and was asking her, like, how is she kind of squaring the circle, whether she thought that we could actually meet those commitments with these projects on the table and with Bill C-5 and the continuous attack on Indigenous land, and really saw her continuously avoid my question, asking me why I'd be concerned about the transmission line, because all electricity is good electricity, in which I told her very clearly that electricity for people and homes is what we need in this circumstance, and not a $6 billion project that is against the wishes of community and is going to power an LNG terminal instead of our homes. And so what she told me was that none of these projects immediately go into the act, and that all projects must meet the needs and wants of communities. And so I'm here to repeat those words and promises to everyone here, because that's something I will be following up with her on. And yeah, I think everyone's here because they think that these projects are not meeting the needs and is not meeting the emergency of climate change. And it's clear that this government is treating this existential threat as a special interest that they're happy to ignore. And so I'm really grateful for folks joining to resist that. Thank you.
Thanks, Janelle. That's really helpful context. And thank you so much for raising this voice for justice in COP30. It's important to make sure that Canada can't just escape what it's doing here at home while they're at international climate conferences. So glad that you raised these concerns and you talked about these transmission lines. Because yes, we've been asking for transmission lines along with our friends at Sacred Earth, who I see some of them are here today, which is so awesome. But yeah, transmission lines for people, like you said, not for LNG plants, not for AI data centers, which seems to be what the priority is of this government. So thanks so much for sharing that. Eve, these were the national trends, and I know that this is not just there are just so many parallels between what's happening at the federal level and what's happening at the provincial level. So maybe you could share a little bit more about those parallels and what's happening provincially, especially in Ontario, where you are.
Yeah, for sure. I just wanted to like um kind of get the message out there that it's just not Ontario and so-called BC, that these bills are being pushed on us. It's happening all across so-called Canada. It's happening like in Nova Scotia with Bill 6. They are fighting uranium in their territories, and like these bills will lift protected like rights around trying to keep uranium mining out of their territories. And in Quebec, there is Bill 97 that is going to deforest their traditional lands out there. But just a quick little note on Bill 97, because of the uprising and blockades that the Indigenous people have erected, that Bill 97 was killed. But they are fearing that they're going to like work on another bill, and they're really worried that it's going to be worse. But that just comes to show that like action really does that really does work, and the pushback that they have received. And so that's just a great example of what needs to be done in face of these bills. And so here in Ontario, for folks who are in Ontario, you know, we have Bill 5, and of course we have Doug Ford, who is just being ruthless and just trying to go for it all. He's been spotted in Wikwamacong. Oh, sorry, my children. But so I see all across the board. Sorry, hold on. Sorry about that. My son kind of he's a little terrorizer right now. Okay, so Doug Ford, yeah, he is, you know, really trying to go you know, push Ring of Fire, and also like other Indigenous lands, like we have Wacomicongo, Anishinaabe territory. And he's been spotted there trying to, you know, scope out the lands. And Wasaga Beach is like this really popular beach near Toronto where like lots of people love to go, you know, in the summertime, hang out. And he wants to privatize some of that beach. And he's not stopping. Like it's not just you know, Indigenous lands that they're going through. Like there's other bills that are being pushed you know, in Ontario that affects housing, that if affects like privatization of water, probably healthcare is next. Anyways, there's a whole list of what's to come with Doug Ford and in Ontario, and also in the Winnipeg. Um, there's not really bills there, but like Wob Canoe is just really trying to, appease, the government and industry, and just, allowing pipelines through there, or just, kind of following that suit with what the government is doing. And so also Alberta has Bill 54, and a lot of their traditional territories are being impacted with, their rights to hunting. I believe it's a caribou, but I know it's like a game that they're really worried about. I saw, and also with water, there's like a bill that they want to take water from the north and bring it to the south, like water that is being pulled out of communities in the north, like they don't even know where their water is going, and Alberta can't even afford to have their clean water extracted from their territories. And then we have, like, in so-called BC, Bill 14 and 15. So, we see all across the board common themes: overriding Indigenous rights, pushing industry through, and like also overriding like endangered species and protected areas. And the big federal bill is to make sure that like they're able to easily do that across the territories and the borders of provinces. So it's what we're seeing right now is a strategy, actually, of from Stephen K. Bannon, who is a white nationalist that actually was a strategist for Trump on his campaigning in 2016. And so this is a strategy to flood laws and legislation as much so people get overwhelmed and cannot fight. And so with this, it just comes to show that we do have to come together, and we do have to find commonalities, and we do have to push back. We do need action. So it's just it's all over the board. And yeah, that's kind of what I want to share on that. Mhm.
That's amazing. Thank you so much, Eve. That's so comprehensive. And you're right that like it's the zone is flooded. We are overwhelmed. It's happening at all levels across all party lines. Like, Wabkanu is NDP, David Eby is NDP. We've got Doug Ford, who's conservative. We've got Carney, who's liberal. Like, it really doesn't matter what the party stripe is. It just seems like everyone has that same agenda, and it's serving billionaires, it's serving big oil. And I mean, we clearly see who the winners are. But speaking of games, I want to throw it to you, Janelle, because right now, a lot of people are saying, Carney is playing some sort of game of like multi-dimensional chess. We lowly civilians can't even understand the game that he's playing. But, you pose the very important question that if this is a game of chess, then who are the pawns? And especially with this MOU that was signed between Alberta and Canada, which has now promised a new pipeline and also just taken us back a whole decade when it comes to climate policies by backsliding on various fronts when it comes to climate policies. Who would you say are the pawns? Do you think we're missing something?
Oh my God, how sick I am of hearing, Carney's playing chess. We heard it when he, sits down, has a friendly conversation with Donald Trump. Oh, he's playing chess. He proudly supports the Silisms project, which is 100% American owned by Trump's inner circle. That's chess too. And now we have the MOU, which is one of the worst announcements that I have in recent memory, and a direct attack, again, not only on climate, but on Indigenous rights and our precious ecosystems. And that's somehow chess too. I think it's clear from the picture that Eve painted, the chess game he is playing is a comprehensive attack, not just on climate, but on health, on migrants, funding war. Like that's the game that he's playing. I think if we were to name some pawns, I think the misuse and attack on Indigenous rights is a clear strategy. these zombie pipelines are coming back to life that look like the exact same projects that we fought a decade ago, but the only difference is this very clear and sinister weaponization of Indigenous sovereignty. These projects are coming back with Indigenous ownership, which is a direct exploitation of the systemic poverty that the federal government has put nations in. I've been thinking a lot about my community and my people. And when I think about, the time scale we're talking on, like it was just a generation or two ago where my people were not allowed to have jobs off our reserve. And if you wanted to have a job on a reserve, you had to go to a federal Indian agent and ask for it, and it was not always granted. And so when we see that now jobs, Indigenous ownership is being pushed now more than ever, that is a pivot and exploitation of the rising awareness of the true history of these lands and people's willingness to want to be in relationship with Indigenous people and uphold Indigenous sovereignty. But I think that has been the strategy since the existence of Canada. And I think there are more pawns than we realize. It's not only Indigenous nation, it's not only racialized folks. It's all of us. It's everyday people across the country. It's the people who voted for Carney because they are afraid of a Polyev government. It's people that are having economic anxiety about putting food on their table and feeding their families. It's people that look to their friends and relatives south of the border and fear for their safety, like that. Those are the people that are being exploited. So yeah, I think what I'm seeing is the Carney government really seeding a sense of disempowerment and a lack of agency. Again, what you said, Atya, is making people feel like, well, we just don't know. We just don't know the answers. And we do. When we look at our needs of communities, when we know what we need to feed our families, what we need to keep women and children safe in our communities, like we have the answers. And so the message I want to send to all those people who keep telling me that he's playing this game is these governments, all of these corporations are exploiting Indigenous lands and labor. And if we can really realize that, we don't need to think of ourselves as pawns. I don't want to be a pawn. I'm sure many of you don't want to either. Like, if we're talking about land and labor, like we own the whole chessboard. And as a movement, we should be the ones using our government as pawns and telling these leaders, again, of all political parties, what we need. And it's certainly not these decade-old bitumen projects or this Indigenous-led project where it's owned by American corporations and gets built in Korea and gives us a few temporary jobs. Like, we deserve better than that. And so I think it's time that we reclaim our agency and tell the government what we need instead of thinking that he knows better, because I think all of us on the call actually know better.
That's amazing. That's so beautiful. Janelle, I think that you really summed it up. Thank you. Yeah, I think it's so refreshing to hear that after feeling like collectively gaslit by all these like political these commentators and journalists claiming that there's something else at play that we just couldn't possibly understand. So thank you so much. I think it was so refreshing for me, and I'm sure for everyone to hear that. I think this builds off really nicely into just, how is the movement for Indigenous sovereignty and land defense and land back responding to this? And Eve, if you could share a little bit more about the response that you've been seeing and also the work that you've been doing with Aid Fire Rising.
Yeah, for sure. So, for those who don't know, I'm a Wet'suwet'en land defender, and I was arrested February 7th, 2020, which, I saw the Shut Down Canada movement. And, all those like nations and communities and groups standing down, throwing down, shutting it down, in solidarity and support of Wet'suwet'en. Like it's such a beautiful thing. And before COVID hit, especially in highly populated areas, groups would kind of throw down like one day and then the next day. And so there was no like communication between groups. And then I started seeing like a lot of burnout or just, people, getting attacked by, police or like white supremacists. And so fast forwarding to here, seeing all these bills pass through and seeing like the uproar, like I was like, whoa, this is like something's happening here. This is huge. And we need to connect now. Like, and this is kind of what I do. I kind of like, connect, mobilize, well, try my best, but I, started reaching out to, comrades. One who is actually the co-founder, Sherry Pasternak, a long time ally of Indigenous folks, and is an amazing, strong movement builder. And so it actually was a lot of intuition actually that made me reach out to folks, which I think is kind of different because like we're using like our intuition, like our spirituality, like our culture, our teachings, and like there's certain people that I would like kind of really connect first. And so yeah, with the bills and seeing another like possible shutdown Canada moment, I was just like reaching out to, other movement leaders and frontline communities. And that's where the Eighth Fire Rising uh, came about. And Eighth Fire Rising is a grassroots group and it's Indigenous led, but also Eighth Fire is a Anishinaabe prophecy. And right now we're in the seventh fire. And each fire has like its own place and time. And for the seventh fire, it talks about how white supremacy and industry and like all these, billionaires that are destroying the earth. And if we keep on going down this road, it's not good. But if we go to the eighth fire, that's when the Indigenous people and allies stand up together and fight together to fight for Mother Earth and fight for a better life. And that's where Eighth Fire Rising comes from. So it's not just Indigenous folks, but it's our allies too as well, because, like, especially in this time, we need each other. We need everyone on board. And with Shutdown Canada, when the so-called government wouldn't, meet with hereditary leadership, it was the people who shut it down that actually brought the ministers, the government to hereditary leadership. So it was the push from the outside. So we have a steering committee of like other strong Indigenous movement leaders and impacted communities. And so we have like two components. So we have the organizing side, the Indigenous steering committee, and then also we have the research component of the group where there are like university professors and like academics, postdoctorates, PhD candidates that are doing this work in, like their specialties are like in mining or like these and these like categories. And so that's where a lot of the research and data you'll see on the 8th Fire Rising.ca. So we have a website and you can sign up, check it out. You can sign up, you can get a newsletter. We do need to do some updates, but a lot of really good research is there. And yeah, I mean, now's the time to get connected. And if you want to reach out and support Indigenous frontlines and folks, reach out to us.
Thank you. And I love hearing your kids in the background. It's so nice that they're joining. Our movement is intergenerational, so kids are so welcome, and it's so nice to hear their voices. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. And thank you for this amazing work. I know for me, it's been so refreshing and so wonderful to see 8th Fire Rising and to see all the incredible work that you've been doing and to feel that energy from Shutdown Canada, which was so contagious and so powerful. Like seeing that come back is so incredible. And Janelle, like I don't know if you remember, but you and I met during Shutdown Canada. Like we met on the streets. And yeah, how are you feeling in this moment? How are you feeling being a part of movements for land back and Indigenous sovereignty in this moment? And what do you feel is the call to action right now for people across the country?
Yeah, the reason why governments are so are using strategies like these false narratives about economic reconciliation, the reason why the right is so directly attacking Indigenous rights and sovereignty right now is because it's been a political force that's kept land safe. Indigenous people have been the largest driving force to protect the places and that we love coast to coast to coast. And more than that, like Indigenous people are also representatives of nationhood and governments, which means that we have over 600 forms of governance that predate the very young country that is Canada, the colonial project. And our governments, I can speak about where I'm from, like we use a feast hall government where you're considered a good chief if you can come to the feast hall and not only have enough for your clan and your people, but enough to share. And where our leaders are completely beholden to their clan members. And in a moment where, I think people are really fed up with colonial politics. I mean, we're constantly coming to elections, voting for the lesser evil. Constantly, people are stuck with like, well, what do I do? I think it's important that we keep engaging and contesting for that space because we know that the right surely is. But I think the threat to the colonial project is that these other forms of governments exist on these lands. And so if you're on this call feeling disillusioned, I think that you can couple the advocacy that you're doing with governments with a commitment to Indigenous rights and sovereignty. And I think you'll find that it's a lot more functional and a lot more democratic. And that gives us a real model of what it looks like to look after land and people. And I think that could transform our colonial project as well. And so yeah, it makes me feel really hopeful, even though it's both, I both am in despair of like having to fight these old projects of, kind of old school racism against Indigenous people resurfacing. We're seeing that Indigenous people are being labeled as threats to progress and being blamed for a vulnerability to Trump. But I know that's not true. I know that we are actually our greatest strength, and I want settlers and guests on these lands to feel a part of that too, because we now have this shared home that we should want to join arms and protect. So I hope that people, take the time to learn about land back movements, to attend community events, introduce yourself to community members and elders, because I think that is the thing that actually scares the hell out of all these bad guys we're fighting.
That's great. Thank you for that reminder, Janelle. And I know previously you've also reminded me that, if we fail to build these relationships in the places that we're in with Indigenous nations whose land we're on, like our enemies are doing that. They're building those relationships, and we are failing to do that. So we owe it to the lands that we're on to do better and to our movements to do better. So this is such a good reminder and such an important call to action. To conclude, I really do want to, like you've both talked about how we are being told that we need these projects, we need this kind of destruction, we need these policies, and we need to, undermine really important things like Indigenous rights, and climate policies. But we know that's not true. And we know that there is a better future that we can build towards. So I'm wondering, even Janelle, maybe you could both comment on just what is the future that you think we should be building instead? And how do you think people here can get involved? And if you have any particular, requests of the people that are here, just hearing from you as a final note about what you think we can be building towards instead of this really depressing status quo.
Sure. Oh, you go ahead,
You
Eve.
Okay. Um, yeah, I think definitely like unity, I would say. I mean, like I know we're like at a point, yeah, we definitely like, need like, a lot of like greener solution based solutions, right? And I think like there are like solar earth that are doing this work. Melena's, shout out to Melena, who is getting um taking action and doing it and bringing like these solutions to communities. And I know that like we definitely have to push back with what's going on right now, especially with this government and industry and the banks. I think like yeah, coming together. I know like not all of us have the answers, and it's about finding them, trying new things, and going in a new direction. And also like the Indigenous folks, like we've always had these solutions, we've always had this way with being in relationship to Mother Earth. And so when I see like I forget how to word it, but um, people are just like, oh, the Indigenous people have things to offer, like solutions to offer. But it's like we've always had it. We've always had that knowledge, even before colonization. So I think it's like right now, unity more than ever. And yeah, like finding solutions and really pushing for that. And yeah, um, I think we might have to go out of some of our comfort zones. Yeah, we really got to push that envelope. So I just kind of always try to encourage that. Just, for example, I had to leave to go to the front line. I had to leave Toronto. I had to leave my apartment. I had to leave school. I was in my fourth year of theater school. I had to leave a job that I had just to go to the front line and like commit myself. As an Indigenous woman, I can't afford that. I can't afford like losing my housing, which I did. And yeah, I just yeah, kind of just try to encourage that. Sometimes we have to just push outside the box a little bit. And I'll pass it on to Janelle.
Sure. And as I'm talking, like if you have an idea of solutions you want to see, I would love if you, as a participant, dropped it in the chat. The reason being is because when we paint the picture of this strategy of overwhelm on all fronts, not just climate, um, I can see very clearly that it's also a tactic to keep us in the state of thinking about what we're fighting against instead of what we're fighting for, um, which is, yeah, it's hard to keep hope when you're in that fight state, especially when there are projects that we've seen before, especially when things are backsliding much faster than we would have thought in our lifetimes. And so I've been really intentional about trying to live in the dream space because these solutions are hard to think of, not because we're not smart enough, not because they're not possible, but because we've been intentionally put in the state of overwhelm. And I think if we allow ourselves to open up our imaginations a little bit and to not play into that tactic, to talk with one another about the things we want to see and to enter that dream space together, I think those solutions are there. I mean, there's so many. We talked right off the bat, like we have a need to electrify our households. We have this huge opportunity to connect the east to west transmission line and really give energy to people and communities. An opportunity to let Indigenous people not just scrape for crumbs of this dying economy, but to lead a new clean energy economy. We have the opportunities to transition workers into not only leading this new economy but building our climate resilience, our community resilience, because we are under threat, not just from Donald Trump but because of the very real climate crisis. Opportunities to look at publicly owned options for everything that the billionaires have been holding close to their chests. Like, yeah, there's so much, and I've gotten to see just like a microcosm of this in my community. I'm from a very small nation. We only have about 200 members that live on reserve in an area that has been heavily impacted by resource all the way back from the fur trade, forestry, fishing, mining, oil and gas, LNG, like back to back to back. And I'm seeing in this moment, we have this like slight pause, like Coastal GasLink just finished. There's no new pipelines going directly through our territory. And I've seen like people are answering this moment of economic uncertainty by thinking of, okay, what can we do in our communities to make our communities more resilient? And I've seen my community build this massive, beautiful greenhouse where we can now get fresh produce year round. Like we've had to travel 2 hours to get fresh produce my whole entire life. We're building a clan house so that our clan leaders can look after children instead of them being taken to foster care. Like, and I can only imagine like what would be happen if we had a longer pause from industry to really think, and what would that look like in communities? And what I find really inspiring about Global South and Indigenous communities worldwide is because they're not a global North country, or because they're not living historically in comfort or privilege. They look at the just transition of just looking at, okay, what are the needs of our community? What makes our community better for children? What makes it better for women? And they are like building these amazing clean energy projects, food sovereignty projects, education projects that like have this beautiful side effect of lowering global emissions, but that's not their goal. They're just thinking about like what do their communities need. And that was really inspiring to me. And I think that's something that I want to take forward in my work in the global north. And yeah, so I think it takes imagination, and it takes good old fashioned organizing of getting to know our neighbors, of rebuilding these gathering places and institutions that we have historically organized in. And again, just like what I think of when I think of what it takes to build relationships with Indigenous communities or uphold Indigenous sovereignty, a lot of people may have the instinct of, oh my God, well, that's really hard. It's a burden. I don't have time for that. I don't have capacity to that. But it is hard, but it's also such a gift. Like I can't say enough about how much the gift of organizing has given me, from hope to joy to friends to people to bring me soup when I'm sick. Like those are things that we have been stripped of and that we can find by linking arms. And so if you're feeling scared and overwhelmed, just know that with all the scary feelings, there's also this flip side of immense joy, that I wish upon all of you and all of your friends.
Thank you. Thank you, both Eve and Janelle. Those are such good notes to end on, this reminder for unity and community. And Janelle, just thank you for giving us permission to imagine and to enter that dream world, because you're right. That is one of the biggest thing that they're taking away from us, is our ability to dream and to imagine a better future. And we absolutely cannot let that go. So holding on to that is so important. Appreciate you both so much for being here. I learn so much from you every time we chat, and I hope that we can connect and also share some food together. Hopefully, I'll be in your city soon. Thank you so much for joining, and I think that was such a great invitation from Janelle to just like imagine what would make our communities better. And I know some people are already putting that in the chat. So maybe as we transition, folks could also just put in the chat, like, what do you want to see? What kind of future do you want to build? I think that's such a great question to ask. Thank you both so much. And please join me in putting out clapping emojis, heart emojis, all kinds of emojis to thank our panelists. And I'll throw it back to Johanna. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you both. It's a hard act to follow. Janelle and Eve, you two are both so brilliant, and it's such a pleasure to hear you speak and share such a clear-eyed assessment of the political moment we're in, the stakes, the kind of narratives, the context that we're fighting in, and also, yeah, some of what's possible in driving that fight. So thank you again so much for sharing and being with us tonight. You know, it's in some ways, feels like a hard time to be a climate activist, to be a human. You know, as Eve was saying, those in power really are kind of flooding the zone. It's such an onslaught of bad news, you know, really trying to keep us, as Janelle was mentioning, in that fight state. And I know that's a hard place to be in. And I know that many people may, like me, have really felt pretty gutted by this MOU, the prospect of a pipeline, the kind of the rollback of so many things that our movements have fought for, and such disregard for the rights of our planet and our communities. So we know this is going to be like a big, long, and hard fight, and are encouraging everybody here to get ready for that longer struggle, do all that relationship building work and that comfort zone stretching that our amazing panelists just spoke about. But we also want to, you know, leave folks here with some concrete next steps and some actual concrete practical action that people can take tonight, right now, in the next couple weeks, as we start to get ready for that longer fight. So, do you want to go to the next slide, Atia? Awesome. We're going to share 3 actions tonight that every person here can do to kind of push back against Carney's fossil fuel agenda and help us get rolling in that longer term work that we have to do to fight for a future that works for all people. So we've got one thing first that we're going to all do together on this call tonight, so that people feel like they've been able to take some action. I know that's a way to, an antidote to despair, as the saying goes, is action. And then I'm going to pass it to my friends to share some other tactics that we can take in the next couple weeks. So next slide. Great. Who here has done a phone zap before? Has anyone participated in a phone zap? You can say hi in the chat or wave. I have done many of them. The purpose of phone zaps is to get on the phone together on Zoom. We can all see each other's faces, and we're just going to actually call our MP right now. So I will very soon stop talking and mute myself, and I too will make a phone call, and it's going to be awkward for 4 minutes while we all do this. But it's a really powerful, motivating way to all take concrete action together. And that means that MPs are going to show up at their offices tomorrow, and they'll have 109 more voicemails than they would have had otherwise, and can really contend with a clear message from people across the country that we reject this agenda of fossil fuel extraction and mega mines on Indigenous lands, that we want better, we demand better for our communities, for our planet. So we've got a script here. You're welcome to follow it exactly or riff on it. Feel free to kind of personalize the talking points a little bit. Glad to hear some folks in the chat have already been zapping their MPs, but it never hurts to call again. There's no such thing as too many calls to one's MP, is how I feel. So there's a link in the chat now, which is the website where you can find your MP's phone number if you don't already have them on speed dial. And we're all going to just take a moment to do this. So feel free to turn on your video if you'd like, so that we can see each other, because it's motivating to make a call together. You'll probably get a voicemail at this point. And I'll see you back here in a couple minutes once we've all left our messages.
Ready when you are, Atya.
Oh, amazing. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing for a little bit. That felt really good. I just left a voicemail for my member of parliament, and I feel like I needed to get that frustration out. So I am really glad that I got a chance to do that. Oh, Haley, I think we should probably um, spotlight ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Great. Thanks so much, Johanna. Thanks for leading us through that. That was so needed. Yeah, and I'm seeing folks posting as well about how their voicemails went. Um, yeah, how did you feel? How are you feeling?
Yeah, it definitely felt good to sort of get some of that frustration out. I do have Alexandre Boulerice, who's one of our lone NDP MPs, but I was glad to leave a message and say, like, hey, take it back to the federal government. I'm pissed. So yeah, that felt good. But, definitely also wanting to do more. And like, I know many in the chat were saying like their MPs don't always just listen to voice memos and stuff. So let's talk about what else we can do.
Yes. Yes, let's talk about it because my MP, Talib Nur Mohammed, loves to ignore me. And I think what I love about the way that Common Horizon organizes is that you make it impossible for MPs and decision makers to ignore you. Like you use such creative tactics and you use satire as such an important tool. So maybe you could share a little bit more about those kind of strategic and tactical decisions you make.
Yeah, so comedy and satire is a tool we like to use because it just sort of throws decision makers off and it can also grab the attention of members of the public who are like maybe not going to resonate with the more traditional tactics that are in our like toolkit, but something that's funny, like they actually might grab onto that. And also just like politicians, they're trained, they've got the media training, they know how to ignore and dismiss the so-called angry activists with a sign like yelling at them, blah blah blah. But if you incorporate satire when approaching them, it just kind of like throws them off their game and sometimes can force them to address something they wouldn't otherwise.
It's such a good tool to have in your toolbox. And you had a great idea to use in this moment, at this moment in time. So do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yes, I had a cheeky little prank that I think would be really fun to do. Also very inspired by the Yes Men, if people know them. So MPs are going to be back in their ridings starting on Friday. So the idea is to just, we need to like totally embarrass them this holiday season because let's be real, all liberals should be extremely embarrassed by the way they're siding with the oil and gas industry executives and rapidly backsliding on climate action and Indigenous rights. So the idea is doing a little dress up, little business casual dress up, and actually going in and posing as oil industry executives to go and deliver holiday thank you cards to the Liberal MP to thank them for giving the oil industry just like everything on their holiday wish list. So the goal here is to embarrass Liberal MPs and hopefully, we know that the Liberal base, many of them are climate concerned voters. And so we want to push on those fractures of dissent within the liberal base. So this could be like if you're not a theater person, this could be like less scary and straightforward and just like going to an MP's office to deliver to the card. But if you want to up the ante, do a little recon, little research, I think it would be so fun to go to your MP's smoochy boozy holiday party and embarrass them there. So picture this, like you're walking up to them, you've got your holiday card, but it's like stashed at the side so they can't see what's going on. You like go up, shake their hand, ask for a photo. They are being an MP and they like pose with you. And your friend starts recording and you say, "Awesome, thanks so much. Like, I'm here with the oil industry and we just want to say thank you so much for everything that you've done for us and scrapping regulations and just helping me buy another yacht. So thank you so much." And oh man, would they squirm. Like, they are going to be so like miserable about the next morning about how they probably reacted on that footage. So you don't have to have the guts to do that if you don't want to. It could be like more of an office visit thing, but I think, taking it to their holiday parties could really make them uncomfortable.
That's great. I love this so much. And I think it's such a good idea. It's such a smart tool. It's such a great idea to embarrass them, to make them squirm, like you said. And well, I got started on the little art project, and I think maybe you did too, Haley. So I will.
You didn't have a chance, but you've got it.
You didn't have a chance. Okay. Well, I love this idea so much. And my mom has a daycare, so I have a lot of craft supplies that I have access to. I made this card from Big Oil. I think someone in the chat suggested Carney as Santa Claus. So that was the concept. And this is my MP, Talib Nur Muhammad, as a little elf carrying a pipeline. We've got a burning planet. We've got climate policies in the trash. We've got a big thank you message to Carney from Big Oil for granting everything on their wish list, especially with the Alberta MOU. So, yeah, I'm really excited. I think I'm going to go on my MP's website, look up when the holiday party is happening, and maybe try to show up. And I know someone mentioned like, they've like talked about Palestine with their MPs, their MP recognizes them. That's the case for me too. So they might kind of suspect something, or I might find some friends that are maybe not as recognizable to come with me. But I think the goal will be to just like try to get a nice little clip of like us going into the party. And even if we don't make it right to Talib, I think the goal really is to embarrass him in front of like the people that are there as well. And I think that's such a good idea. Um, yeah, did you have plans, Haley? I guess you're not going to visit your MP because he's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. But I think Gibbo's in the neighborhood. Well,
Right.
not maybe not Gibbo, but there's other liberal MPs in the neighborhood who yeah, we could go and embarrass. I think the people want to see the card one more time. If you can hold
Oh, yes. Of
everyone wants to
course.
take their screenshot.
I'm so proud of it. I feel like everyone will have their own take on their holiday card, but Carney as Santa Claus, I do highly recommend because it just fits. And I'm sure your Liberal MP would make a nice elf.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're dropping in the chat. There is a resource guide that we've put together. It has thoughts on what you could write in the card, thoughts on how you could find out when your Liberal MP is going to be having their holiday party. Ideas are like going on the Liberal website, has some of them listed, just calling up directly, asking if there's going to be a holiday party, and also getting on the email list to see if you can get any intel. There's also a script I wrote that you can give you a little training and just some other ideas for how to pull this off.
So amazing. Thanks so much, Haley. I'm going to what you've said. We've also just put this on a slide to just recap one more time. But basically, find your buddy, track your MP down, whether it's by signing up for their newsletter, going on their website to see their upcoming holiday party, or maybe just like finding a time in your calendar to go visit their office, making your card. So here's a picture of my card again, and designating your roles. So finding someone at least who can like film or take photos, and practicing a little bit. So if you're going to give a little spiel, if you're going to get really theatrical, it's really great to practice your bit a little bit. And then of course going and actually delivering your thank you card. And once you do, please do email us and post on social media. We have all the details for how you can tag us and email us in the toolkit. Yeah, this was so great. Thanks for this idea, Haley, and thanks, Johanna, for putting together this toolkit. Did you have any final words of advice for everyone?
Yeah, I think just practice, maybe have it run through a little bit so it feels easy to do on the day. Also, I'm just gonna drop in this chat because I know we're a little over time. If folks need to leave, there's just some final links about if you're a young person joining Common Horizon. I'll drop those links, but we'll come back to that later.
Amazing. Great. And we'll wrap up soon. And I just wanted to invite Johanna because there's also another important piece around the holiday season. It's important to make your MPs squirm, but we also have some battles to fight at home, because we know that MPs aren't the only people that we have to worry about. We know that like the majority of people in so-called Canada are starting to believe this fossil fuel nationalism that is being fed to us. According to recent polling, 60% of Canadians are in favor of a pipeline from Alberta to northern BC, which is really alarming. So there's a lot of work to do on our home front because 60% of Canadians, that means it's a lot of people that we're connected to that we're going to see over the holiday season. So yeah, Johanna, can you share a little bit about that?
Totally. Yeah. Thanks so much, Ezia. Yeah, I mean, it is bleak out there and it's alarming to see pipelines, which were really like a unpopular 10 years ago, kind of gaining steam again, in part due to some of the things that Janelle and Haley spoke about earlier in terms of some of the nationalist narratives that Carney is pushing and the economic precarity that many of us are dealing with. But luckily, we actually have a huge opportunity coming up with the holidays. So many of us, whether because we have some time off work or our kids are home from school or we're celebrating various holidays over the next month, we'll be spending extra time with our friends and families in the next couple weeks. And because climate policies and these proposed pipelines are kind of back in the headlines more so than they have been over the last couple of years, you might actually find yourselves talking with your loved ones about climate politics more than you otherwise would. And that actually gives us a really important chance to kind of connect with people in our lives and help set the record straight because people are being fed a lot of pretty dangerous misinformation. And it's up to us to really make sure that we're not leaving anyone behind and we can help collectively get to work and have some of these hard conversations to make pipelines toxic again. Do you want to just share screen, Ezia, so we can walk people through some advice on how to do this?
Yes,
Awesome.
let's do it. Okay. Yeah.
Cool. So, one thing that we've noticed from having tried to have hard conversations with our loved ones before about politics and climate and other things is that it can be really tempting to just get pretty aggressive immediately if your, cousin or neighbor or whoever starts kind of mouthing off about some hot topic issue. But usually what that makes people do is kind of get more entrenched in their stance and get defensive and be less likely to hear what you're actually saying or less likely to change their opinion. So we're really encouraging folks, if you're willing to do some of this hard work this holiday season, to get kind of curious and try to stay engaged. We don't actually want to leave anyone behind, and we don't want to let kind of fossil fuel lobbyists prey on our loved ones with their propaganda campaigns. So we actually have this model that we've adapted from a resource created by the Migrant Rights Network. And we've got a lot more information in the conversation guide that Atia just dropped in the chat. But briefly, the first step is really to listen, actually listen, so you can really hear what somebody is saying. And try to ask some questions if you can, to dig deeper. Behind the kind of polarizing talking points, there's usually some underlying feeling. Is it anxiety or fear or something else? And then next, what you can do is really acknowledge and try to connect with those deeper feelings. So even if we're not sharing the same conclusions or we don't have access to the same information, we usually can connect on the basis that I too am worried about my kid's future, or I'm struggling to pay rent, or, whatever it is. And that connection can really be the basis towards transformation. Step 3 on our little framework here is to offer new facts. Facts on their own won't cut it. But information is actually important, especially when we're in this misinformation propaganda battlefield landscape that many of us are trying to navigate. And it's important to kind of push back on some of the greenwashing work that Carney and Smith and the Pathways Alliance and others are putting so much money into doing. Lastly, we want to invite our loved ones into a shared vision of a safe, affordable, just future that includes all of us. This is really what I was thinking about when Janelle and Eve were wrapping up the panel, is we can not leave people behind, bring people into that future, and really on that basis start to fight back against these policies and these divide and conquer tactics. So we've got lots of examples in our conversation guide of some concrete ways that people can try this, but I'll just share a couple quick examples before we wrap up. So one thing you might hear at the dinner table is about kind of affordability and the cost of living crisis that many of us are facing. People might say something like, I've heard this new pipeline is going to finally get the cost of living under control. Things have gotten totally out of hand. And a way to respond to that, following our kind of framework, is to really, again, connect with that underlying feeling. I hear you. Everything has gotten so expensive. I'm also struggling to keep up. But a new pipeline would really just benefit rich foreign tar sands investors, not actually ordinary Canadians. And they won't actually, burning more oil is actually just going to increase the likelihood of really dangerous and expensive climate impacts. If you have a story that you can slip in there about a time that you were impacted by one of those climate impacts, that can be a really powerful way to help shift people's perspectives and opinions. So obviously these aren't, exact scripts or recipes to follow, but these can be some really powerful ways to help reframe and to kind of reorient people's perspectives when they're bringing up things like this. All right, Adsy, do you want to share another example before we wrap?
Yeah, I think really quickly, this is the one that I'm hearing at all of the Pakistani dinner parties, the davats, as we call them, is just oh yeah, this is with tariffs and Trump being so aggressive, we need new pipelines, we need new fossil fuel infrastructure. And this is I'm sure one that everyone is hearing, or a lot of people are hearing. Yeah, I think a similar strategy for responding is really important. So I think validating it is so crucial, because this is such an emotionally driven response. And so yeah, saying, yes, I hear you. I am also really nervous about Trump. I'm nervous about US aggression, but actually building new pipelines plays into Trump's hands. In fact, a lot of the fossil fuel infrastructure that we're building, it's owned by American companies. Some of it is even owned by companies that have really close ties to Donald Trump himself. And so, this is not how we build resilience. The pipelines that we're building, they wouldn't even be even operational until at least 10 years from now. 10 years from now, Trump will be long gone, and the world will have moved away from fossil fuels, and we will just be stuck with this infrastructure that is made to export a product that no one wants. No one will want Canadian tar sands oil in a decade from now. In fact, there's hardly a market for it right now. Even current pipelines are not operating at capacity. So these are important points to keep in mind. And I know that, Johanna, you've put so much thought into all of the responses that have gone into the guide. So really do encourage people to check out the guide that has a lot more little fact tidbits. But I think the important thing is yeah, you don't need to know all the facts. A lot of times you don't need to bring, facts to an emotional conversation. You can actually just connect with people at an emotional level and just kind of ground them in a bit of what you're seeing and what you're observing and how you're understanding the world.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Azia, for that example. Yeah, I think it can feel intimidating, but we really want to just encourage folks to get prepared and equipped so that you feel ready to tackle these things when they come up. We all have so many people in our lives who actually we have trusting relationships with, and it's worth leveraging that to try to shift the tide of public opinion in the ways that we can. All right. That's it for our 3 actions. So I'm going to throw it to Haley to help wrap us up.
Awesome. You can do the spotlight. So I'm really excited about everyone here on this call getting into action and fighting for a better climate stable world. But we also know there's just like no one silver bullet tactic, and we're going to need a prolonged, sustained mass movement effort. So I wanted to offer that if you're a millennial and Gen Z and you're looking for a political home in your city where you can continue taking action, want to tell you about Common Horizon, which I'm an organizer for. It's a movement of Gen Z millennial workers who are fighting back against corporate greed to win affordability and climate solutions. So far we have chapters in Victoria, Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, and Montreal, and we're looking to grow. Our chapters are open and accessible spaces for both experienced organizers and people getting involved for the first time, and we'll support your growth with trainings, campaign plans, coaching, and other support. Oh, also, actually, if you want to put the little graphic, it has like some photos from us as I keep talking. So examples of things that chapters are working right now include canvassing in our neighborhoods about the need for a tax on mega corporations to make life better for working people, leading town halls, doing solidarity work with the labor movement, collaborating on the Dry the Line actions with 350 and other groups, and hosting fun social events to bring in new people. In the new year, we're going to be going hard on trying to organize young workers who are rank and file members of their unions to start organizing within the structure of their union to reach people and build people power who might, like, with people who might not otherwise be reached by traditional climate organizing. So if you're Gen Z or millennial and you're looking for a political organizing home and you'd like to get involved in one of our chapters, there's a couple links in the chat. And yeah, if you're not in this aid category, it's not at all a lack of love. We're just really trying to focus on building up a new generation of young organizers, and especially like we're seeing that like there's a lot of like on-campus organizing that happens, but once people graduate and join the workforce, there really isn't stuff, and so we want to provide that at home. And yeah, also just trying to like keep young people out of the rightward skew to fascism, no good. And yeah, create accessible, fun, friendly spaces for people to be involved in and build community. And I'll pass it back to Atya.
Amazing. Is the Common Horizon slide showing now?
Yeah, it's up there.
Okay, great. Okay, yeah, sorry. Wasn't sure what happened with the tech. That's amazing. Thank you, Haley. I am so in love with the work that Common Horizon is doing, and it's so important. And I'm so blessed to like know some of the Common Horizon folks in my local community. They're so cool and so awesome. And I just wanted to share just like a final summary of everything that you've seen today. We will also email it out to you if you RSVP to this call, but just one more time, we have a toolkit. It includes a script, it includes a card delivery toolkit, and it includes a conversation guide. So you too can make a card like this one and deliver it to your MP, really encouraging Liberal MPs in particular to be targeted. And one final shout out to Eighth Fire Rising because they're so amazing and you can check out their amazing work on their website. So I think Johanna is sharing all those links in the chat, and you can check out all those things as well. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. We really appreciate your time. We really appreciate your commitment to the movement. And we wanted to end this year with some fiery actions, but we will be back in the new year with more as well. So please stay tuned. Bye, everyone.
Coming.
Thanks so much for coming. Have a good night.
Amazing.